And then you'll check them all. Oh, he's gonna be using this.
Can everyone hear us?
Yes, we can now.
Hey. All right. Thanks for your help. All right, are we ready to go, guys? I'm looking at our,
I think so.
Good to go?
Folks on the phone, can you hear Laura?
This is Frank. I can hear.
perfect. Thanks, Frank.
Cool.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience while we've been working out technology issues, which is just our favorite thing to do. I know it is yours too. My name is Laura Campbell with Michigan Farm Bureau. Have the opportunity to serve as one of your tri-chairs for the council, and like to welcome you all this afternoon. We'll go through our quick roll call for everybody who's here in the room. If you're participating online, we've got your participation there for your as part of the recording. I will ask if the person who's logging in from the phone number that ends in 27, if you don't mind unmuting and identifying yourself, just so that we've got your name for the notes.
That's the plan.
Are you able to unmute? Okay, we'll see if we can come back to you. Let's go around, and so that everybody participating online knows who's here in the room, we'll go around and do introductions in the room quick. And we can start down at the end of the table there, maybe?
Okay, so Brianna Hammondry with Jetco.
Thanks.
Jim Milne, Eagle Water Resources Division.
Christine Alexander, Eagle Water Resources Division.
Abby Eaton, Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Katie Lindstrom, Power Engineering Company.
Dave Hamilton, retired from Nature Conservancy.
Brian Burrows with Michigan Trout Unlimited.
Matt Staskevich, American Water Works Association.
Kelly Turner, Michigan Potato Industry Commission.
Jason Walker, Michigan Potato.
Marty Sebastian, Michigan Groundwater Association. Doug Needham, Michigan Aggregates Association.
Megan Napier, AKT Peerless.
James Lift, Eagle Executive Office.
Rex Vaughn, representing Dave Maturin. We are both on the Michigan Lakes and Streams Association Board of Directors.
And let's do it outside the room.
Ron Feenstrom, Midwest Water Stewards.
Harold Michigan Parker.
Katie Micah, Eagle Office of the Great Lakes.
Barry Skidler, Michigan Groundwater Association.
And Frederick, Michigan Groundwater Association.
Jim Baker, Walters Gardens. Luke Texel, Walters Gardens. Ed Sarkey, Eagle Growers.
Sarah Pearson, Eagle Drinking Water and Environmental Health.
Jeff Thorland, Michigan Potato. John McGee, Michigan Valley. Bruce Cotton, Potato Growers, Michigan.
Hannah Arnett, Eagle.
Jim Kessler, Sandyland Farms.
Doug Bloom Farms.
Clay Dupree, Eagle.
All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay. What I'd like to do is see if there are any objections, edits, or things that you need to add to today's agenda, which hopefully you received by email from Sherry. Don't forget to unmute yourself if you need to speak up while you're participating online. All right, hearing no changes to the agenda, we'll go ahead and roll forward with it as written. I'd like to take a request for if there are any edits or changes to the minutes from our last meeting, which hopefully you also received in that email for your review.
John Yelich here.
Hearing none. Sorry.
Sorry, Laura. John Yelich here. At the last end of Jim Milne's statement in there, it says John and MGS. Just put my last name, Yelich.
Okay. Thank you. Any other amendments or edits to make to the minutes? All right, sounds good. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. What we'll move on to next is we'll ask for public comment and as.
Point of order, point of order. Your agenda calls for a roll call vote on both the agenda and the minutes. Are you doing it as a consent agenda agreement and just rolling through it?
We do, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, next part is public comment. You'll notice, for those of you who maybe haven't done this before, we have 2 public comment periods. We like to reserve the first one for items that may be related to what's on our agenda for today. And we have a second open comment period at the end. That's for any topic that anybody wants to bring up that might have relevance to the council or to stuff that folks are working on out in the countryside. So this being the first one, does anyone have public comments that they want to make about agenda related items today? All right, hearing none, I will go ahead and turn things over to Brian.
All right, welcome. Jump right into the committee chairs reports, and the first one up is the data committee. And for the data committee update, this month, I would say that 2 things to cover briefly is one, you'll be getting the scheduling request if you've kind of participated on a data committee meeting before. You'll be getting something from Megan, Megan Tinsley very, very soon. Probably to set up 2 meetings, at least in early January, and then we'll see what the crowd says for either a late January or early February. We were contemplating trying to squeeze one into December, and then we decided that the rest of the world is trying to squeeze meetings in before Christmas, so we wouldn't, and we don't need to, so we didn't. But you'll see that. We also had Megan and I, the co-chairs of the committee, met with Jim and Lena from Legal to discuss a draft RFP for the long-term planning, which is the not so specific name that we gave in the 2020 report, to in an effort to sort of catalog inventory all the existing relevant data that we all collectively have for use in this program, so that we could then identify the gaps and then eventually move on to kind of a very robust way of prioritizing and listing out our long-term future needs for data to support the program. And so that was one of the items that had not, maybe our only one that had not gotten to kind of the RFP point. Eagle staff did a great job with the first draft. We reviewed, got on a call, discussed it. Lena's making a couple of edits. We're going to get that back out over the next couple of weeks, and that'll be kind of a subject for the next up meeting of the data committee to kind of overview that, share it. We'll start having good discussions about that, but the RFP and the project is pretty simple. That was not one of the featured high value, expensive projects that we had. So it has a leaner budget, and we tried to make the RFP reflect what we most uniquely need for consulting help and technical help to do that. So that's also been useful in that it really starting to operationalize how we're going to implement that one, and identified some of the things that the council and participants in the data committee will need to do to support that effort. And there's kind of some short-term stuff to get ready for whoever's eventually selected to cut down on their time finding stuff and knowing about those data sources. And then on the end of that project, we will all have to do some of the work for the prioritization. Thinking about which types are, more valuable in which areas of the state, kind of putting together a well thought out and agreed upon prioritization scheme. So that's been helpful. The committee will have some work to do to support that one, and we'll talk about R&D at our next meeting. That'll be coming out. Anybody have any questions for the data committee? Okay, models committee update.
All right. Thought I'd just start my comments by noting that it was 15 years ago, the Great Lakes Compact was signed and inaugurated. And just as a historical note, Michigan was the last state to ratify the agreement, but the first state to implement it. And the reason was that Michigan legislature did not want to go forward on this commitment unless they knew what say was gonna have to do. And so, we developed this process that we're now working with, and, there's widespread support to, start that. So it's been 15 years now since that, was legally started. I think it was actually July the next year that it, officially went live. So glad to, recognize that, and, in the Miles Committee, we've been working pretty diligently to try to do some things to help, bring this process to, kind of another level, increase its capabilities pretty significantly. So we've got a number of things in the hopper to do that. We're still waiting for the final go-ahead for things that we have, in the 2020 report. And so unless Jim has some things to add in his report, I don't have anything new because everything's within the department's process at this point. One other thing is the, Oxford Performance Test Guidance. I thought we were done with that, and then I found out there were still some issues there. So, consultants have it. I was told that, or I asked and they said that they would give me some language. So they're going to give me a draft of what they think would work for that. And I'll share that with the committee and we'll see where we're at. But hopefully it won't be too long before we get that. And, along the way to site-specific review case study will be this afternoon. So I will introduce that in a little while. And then we do have a meeting that we crammed into December. And so we'll be meeting on December 20th. That's a Wednesday from 9 to 11. And John Yelich will be our speaker. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And people from the data committee will also be very interested in coming to this as well. Because John has made a very good case as to why we need all this geologic data. So he's going to show us what he's got, what he has in some counties, explain where it's been done, what data that's been gathered, how it can be used to better understand groundwater resources, how it can help in modeling groundwater systems and their interaction with surface water, how the data can be accessed and in what formats, and what the schedule is for completing this work. And we will be working closely with John as we get the Michigan Hydrologic Framework going, because that will be an important piece of information that we want to draw on as part of that work. So that meeting is December 20th. So otherwise, that's all I've got right now.
Any questions for the Models Committee? All right, thank you. New topics, anything to report? Nope. Okay. Conservation and Efficiency Committee.
Yes, so we also crammed in a December meeting. Jeremiah Asher came to the meeting and really gave us an overview of the Maple River Watershed Project that was based CPA funding was captured for that and gave us a lot to think about that we're going to take into next year in considerations as we build towards the next set of recommendations already happening next year. The Office of the Great Lakes coordinated and submitted their 2023 Water Conservation and Efficiency Program. We have scheduled meetings for next year, so we're going to keep on the same cadence every month, the first Thursday of the month. So anyone who is looking to attend another meeting, we'd love to have you. We continue to work on those 2020 recommendations and advancing those. So if we start with the conservation efforts through the state's climate change and water infrastructure initiatives, the Office of the Great Lakes did develop a request for proposal. I think we talked about that the last time that we were in here. The RFP was released in June. They held a webinar in July and applications were due August 28th. I think those applications have been reviewed. They're waiting. They have one applicant who is asking questions. And so they don't want to move forward with that until they've answered all of the questions surrounding that. But I think they're close to finalizing that within Eagle, and we're hoping for a public announcement coming out pretty quickly. We'll move on to the increasing water conservation and efficiency practices in agriculture, and we're gonna play that one again. So the positions were posted. They had applicants. They went through the interview process and found that those applicants weren't suited for the position, and so they are they kind of took a look at the positions and they re-racked it, and changed a little bit of wording to make it more conducive to get a better applicant pool. And I think last week I saw, the opening for that, the announcement that they're taking applications again for that come out. So, they're hoping to have interviews done in February, so we're spinning that one around again, but that's.
Closing is January 19th.
That's all I have.
Any questions for the Conservation and Efficiency Committee?
Hey, Brian, it's Emily. I just wanted to clarify, sorry, Kelly, I realized I missed something on our previous slide. Just wanted to clarify that the Office of the Great Lakes submitted the annual program assessment for the Michigan's Water Conservation Efficiency Program. That's due and required under the compact on an annual basis. So we submitted that at the end of November. And then I just also wanted to make a note that we have a new staff person in face and Office of the Great Lakes who's in the room with you today, Katie Micah. She's our new Great Lakes Stewardship Coordinator, and she'll be working on water conservation, Great Lakes stewardship, and water governance work for the office. And she's got a very deep background and set of experiences in water policy, more from the West Coast, working on sustainability initiatives, but also some specific things tied to water conservation. So we're looking to tap into her knowledge and expertise and help us with some work on the Water Conservation Efficiency Committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Implementation Committee.
Well, we met November 14th, and we did go through all of the 2020 recommendations. And glad to say that almost all of them are in some type of status of either RFPs being issued or funding kind of agreements being drawn up. It was discussed that, okay, all of these funds, the 10 million that was provided for the 2020 recommendations, they have to be obligated by September 30th of 24. So we've got a little less than a year to get all of those funds obligated, and they have to be spent by September 30th of 26. So we're kind of talked, is there a way to get an extension on those projects or on the funding after obligation?
I know there's no way to extend the application. As it says there are federal guidelines, I am not sure there's any extension available, but you can just double check.
Yeah, because the Michigan Hydrologic Framework, that's a 3-year project.
It's a 3-year project, but we'll just have to do less testing or less rollout. Give them a chance for public to review. That's probably where it's going to be cut, unfortunately.
Okay. So that was just one of the things. We also went through in the 2022 report, and just kind of talked about, is there any of those recommendations that can move forward, but we didn't get any funding. So now we're gonna have to go back in and try to lobby the legislators to provide some funding for those. So the executive committee did try to do a presentation last year. I think that's gonna have to just be something that kind of what we talked about is, because we kind of came up with how do we lobby for that, and I think it starts with an executive committee presentation. And then we can try to get some funding on that. So the other thing that we talked about was kind of should there be another committee formed to follow up on previously approved recommendations. There's kind of a list of them that kind of have been floating around. Remember when we made our 2020 report, we pared down about 87 things down to a manageable number. It was just recommended that each subcommittee go through and relook at that list. And if there's anything that you think is valuable, to bring it forward so that we don't let that fall off the radar. But with that, I think that's pretty much, Laura, unless I missed something.
Yeah, you did a great job. One of the things we also talked about in the process of trying to make it more accessible and more available for council members to kind of be able to look up on where are we with recommendations, particularly as we keep moving forward and make more recommendations, is to try to create some way to be able to share that spreadsheet so that, you know, somebody who wants to, you know, we've sent it out via email a bunch of times. But obviously every time we send it out, it changes because there's updates. So we'd like there to be a way to be able to share that with council members so that you can access it on some kind of like Google Drive or public Drive or something, or something like that. This isn't a completed document that would be, you know, like a, hey, y'all come, you know, I mean, if somebody from the public really wanted to see it, I guess they could, but it's not, you know, it's not completed materials. It's just it's just status updates for us. So we're still trying to work that out, a feasible way to be able to share that document. But anytime that anybody has questions like, hey, where are we on these projects? Just get a hold of Doug or get a hold of me. We'll make sure you get a copy of the spreadsheet in its latest form until we can figure out a way to get that out so that everybody has like a link that you can just look at where things are right now.
To add one thing that's, I'll fit it here because you brought it up. David Sharon was nice enough to kind of follow up with me after our last XCOM meeting, kind of, we forgot something. And we do have a need to figure out our own kind of, you know, water use advisory council process. We're advocating for that 2022 funding. So we need to, whether it's implementation committee or through XCOM or a short duration group of people who are comfortable and knowledgeable working in that space, kind of band together and develop our strategy for the timelines. Is it, you know, requesting a presentation? Is it resending the report? When those steps are, and we recognize kind of quickly, not everybody's comfortable with who they represent, maybe working in that space, but those of us that are still have to get the funding to do those 2022 recommendations. So maybe I can reach out to you, Doug, and we can figure out, you know, between your committee and some of the other interests, how to start pulling that together.
That sounds good.
What do you, this just occurred to me, so please feel free to shoot it down. What if we had like a legislative relations committee that people could be part of as part of the council, and it would be largely folks who have the ability to go in and lobby legislators? We might be able to pull in other folks to say, hey, can you testify at the hearing, even if you can't lobby? But those would be the folks who would kind of be responsible for the strategy of like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to this senator, you reach out to that committee, you know, let's try to get a hearing. I mean, should we kind of formalize it like that a little bit and help, and that way be able to make it a little bit more consistent process?
Opinion, I'm not quite sure. I'm wide open. But to think, I think in one way or another, whether we formally do it right now, I think we kind of informally or functionally need to pull it together and then see how we do. I'll ponder on it. I don't think we have to do it today. I think we got to functionally pull a group of people willing to kind of strategize on it. I want to be careful and go back and say, you know, statutorily, we're here to make recommendations. So a lot of us urging that is not considered lobbying when you've been invited to make recommendations to that body. But let me do some careful figuring in on whether we set something up that's kind of a permanent new committee or whether we just kind of functionally pull it together. But for any of those of you that are here that do that work, that have knowledge in that, please start planning on helping pull together with the rest of us to figure it out here.
And Dave.
Well,
Thank you.
and I guess I suggest we work through the executive committee to kind of do that. If we decide that we do want a separate group to do that, kind of, as far as through the executive committee, but I think the executive committee is basically going to be the core group for that work. And I think we efficient to work it out. That'd be my suggestion.
I'm fine with that. I just don't want to close it off from people who say, you know, hey, I know this senator, I can call them, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to derail us and, you know, add a new agenda item without asking permission and all ready to do that, but I didn't want to forget it. It was brought up. It was something that we kind of forgot to put on the agenda. We can't report too long to forget.
Yeah,
true. Any other questions for implementation committee? All right, not seeing any. Thank you all for those report outs. And we will move to agenda item number 7 and the Eagle update. I'll hand that to Jim to lead through.
Good, thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, and this is the program update for Eagle's water use program. Quick note on personnel. We are in the process of backfilling a vacant geologist position that does one of the 4 that does SSRs in our unit. And that position, all goes well, should be filled early January. Okay, moving on to an update on progress for the 2020 recommendations. So first up, the Michigan Hydrologic Framework. We've received an updated project budget, schedule, and work plan for the Michigan Hydrologic Framework that now includes the Michigan Integrated Water Management Database that's being incorporated into the scope of work for the Michigan Hydrologic Framework. And we're in the process of developing a grant agreement with Eagle procurement staff for that. Unit staff and Eagle procurement staff are currently reviewing bids received for the request for proposals for the transition probability mapping recommendation. We're waiting on IT reviews from DTMB for the request for proposals for the updated aquifer properties in the water withdrawal assessment tool, and also making improvements to the water withdrawal assessment tool user interface improvements. Lena Pappas and I had an initial meeting, like Brian said, with Brian and Megan as the co-chairs of the data collection committee to talk about draft scope of work for the long-term planning recommendation. And as Brian said, that'll be a topic at a future data collection committee meeting. Water use assessment units working with USGS to have them work on a new joint funding agreement for stream gauges and miscellaneous or manual stream flow measurements. Eagle staff are developing a GIS field application, 2 of them actually, one to document well locations that are being added to the National Groundwater Monitoring Network run by USGS. Not only the well locations, the well conditions, and then for the wells that are accessible, uploading groundwater elevation data. Eagle still needs to meet with USGS to adapt their proposed scope of work for additional monitoring wells to fill in some of the data gaps not covered by the National Groundwater Monitoring Network. Eagle Groundwater Data Management System. I can't share details with you at this time because of the confidentiality agreement I signed, but I can tell you that the state of Michigan did receive multiple bids in response to the request for proposals for creating Eagle Groundwater Data Management System, and a joint DTMB Eagle evaluation team conducted technical reviews of bid received and some of the vendors came in to give us live demonstrations. Target contract start date is the first quarter of calendar year 2024. The source of the funding for the Eagle Groundwater Data Management System, $7.1 million, is from the IT Investment Fund, which is separate from that $10 million legislative appropriation for the 2020 recommendations. Brief update on the status of the proposed Aqua Bounty project. Work on that project has been delayed. Word of mouth is that they were denied right-of-way access for their piping and that's being appealed in court in Ohio. Meanwhile, USGS and Eagle staff are busy trying to obtain property access from private citizens and also local units of government in Michigan to have our Eagle Remediation Redevelopment Division's Geological Services section go out and drill monitoring wells in the state of Michigan within the proposed zone of impact for the Aqua Bounty well field. And we're also working on a memorandum of understanding between Remediation Redevelopment Division and Water Resources Division to pay for having RRD Geological Services do the monitor well installation.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick? before
Sure.
we continue? The monitoring wells that are going to be drilled as part of the review of Aqua Bounty's permit. What's the opportunity for those to see usefulness or data collection after this permit process is over? Are those able to be incorporated into any kind of the state's network or to be continued, or to continue to be able to provide data that might be useful for the water use program?
Yeah, they should be available long-term for collecting groundwater elevation data. There's no plans at present to collect groundwater quality data, but there's that opportunity in the future. So going forward, even if Aqua Bounty hasn't started yet or doesn't start at all, the wells will be in place so we can monitor groundwater elevations, aquifer sustainability, and provide additional information on background groundwater quality for the Mission Doe aquifer. So.
Thanks. Sure.
Okay, Triple M Vela Pit operation in Ann Arbor Township. We had a Part 327 permit application submitted for that project, which was withdrawn by the applicant. Our Jackson District Office staff and Lansing staff went out and did site inspections at that facility. And a violation notice was issued for parts 31, 91, 301, 303, and 327. So that's water quality, soil erosion and sedimentation, inland lake and streams, wetlands protection, as well as 327, large quantity water withdrawal. Corrective actions are in progress to address those violations. And we recently received a hydrogeological study that was submitted by our district staff for my staff to review for that project.
Jim, is that a cleanup project or is that what's?
Nope, that's an active sand and gravel mining project.
Right.
Okay, moving on to program metrics. For calendar year 2023, January through the end of November. Water withdrawal assessment tool, a total of 219 large quantity withdrawals were authorized by the tool, and another 169 were authorized through site-specific reviews. Of those 169 site-specific reviews, again, through as of November 30th, like I said, 169 authorized, 4 denied, 10 retracted by applicants, and 4 were still pending review as of November 30th. Timeliness statistics, again, January through the end of November. Average number of business days to complete an SSR, 11.2 days. Percentage of SSRs that were done within the 10 business day statutory deadline, 57%. And this slide shows the cumulative timeliness trends. The top is the graph is the average number of business days to complete an SSR. And the bottom is the percent that were completed within that 10 business day statutory deadline. We also do pre-screening reviews for drinking water division. That's the equivalent of doing a site-specific review for a proposed community water supply, in addition to the other regulations under the Safe Drinking Water Act that Drinking Water administers. During that time frame, January 1st through December 8th, we completed 39 pre-screening reviews. 23 of those were approved as Zone A, 4 Zone B, 3 Zone C, 6 were denied as Zone D, 2 retracted by applicant, and 1 was existing baseline capacity. Part 327 permit applications for newer increased withdrawals above 2 million gallons a day. Calendar year 2023 to date, we've issued 5 permits and had 1 application that Triple M Vela Pit retracted by applicant. Our compliance metrics for the period January 1st through December 1st. We sent out 96 compliance communications. Those are typically less serious violations that can include things like amended registrations or withdrawals that were operated and or installed differently than what was authorized. If there is available water to authorize the as-built as operated. It also includes after the fact registrations. So if we come across unregistered withdrawal that we're able to authorize because it's available stream flow. Also includes missing pump information compliance and communications. So if we run across a well log that doesn't have the pump information, we contact the property owner to get that updated information. Anything else you want to add to that, Hannah? During that same period, we issued 12 first violation notices and investigated 3 complaints.
Excuse me, Jim.
Yeah.
Are those 3 complaints, would those be like property owners not having enough water? Or are those other type complaints?
Usually it's like a truck has parked next to a streamline over a road. and
Okay.
dump-
Yeah.
Do you track like private well owners, like residential?
Separate program.
That would be the part 317 up dispute resolution
Okay.
program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this table is rather busy, but those are the depleted water management areas as of October 5th, 2023. With the worst in terms of how many gallons per minute in the negative they are at the top going down. Watershed left water management area number, the stream classification, county, the index flow, the 50% summer low flow value, allowable depletions, and the current depletion total. And the next slide is a map that shows the locations of some of those depleted water management areas. So large cluster of them in Southwest Michigan, with additionals there in Central Michigan. Anything else you want to add, Hannah, or we?
Jim, can you maybe give us a little bit of characterization, because the list is a little bit longer than the last time we saw it. Can you help us with a little bit of characterization of what you're finding when you see that these are when you're looking at these streams, that they end up with depletions past what should be their allowable depletion?
There's a couple of them that had the Bedrock auto pass back when you first started the program. And then when we re-looked at those, we considered them not combined. So that's the majority of the top of the list. That's what those ones are from. Some of them are when we get an index flow review completed, that comes back lower than the tool had originally predicted. That's what some of them are from. I have to look at the list. If you want an explanation for them, I can add that.
I think that'd be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
When the tool was originally designed, the groundwater model was designed for a bedrock aquifer withdrawal. That if bedrock withdrawals in the Marshall and the Saginaw aquifers, for example, were originally considered not to be in hydraulic communication with surface water. That is true for much of the area, but not everywhere. Case in point being the Marshall area, where we've discovered that, yeah, there is a hydraulic connection between the Marshall Formation and surface water. So that automatic auto pass feature was disabled a few years ago. And then accounting for the depletions for those auto passes ended up pushing some of those withdrawals into the negative. Since then, we've been prioritizing some of those depleted water management areas for having USGS put in stream gauges and or go out and collect miscellaneous flow measurements to keep an eye on those. Anything else you want to add, Clay or Hannah? No.
I think we could create a list and give you, kind of categorize it for you guys. I think it'd be pretty clear what's going on.
Because I just when I, seeing seeing the list and understanding how our statute treats adverse resource impacts. I guess what I wanna help understand is kind of, you know, as we try to figure out how these are characterized and what's causing those, then what process is Eagle using to make decisions on, is this an ARI? You know, how do we determine that? And then what are the next steps that we take?
So just that top line example, and this is where I struggle with that too, is it's still characterized as a cool stream. So it hasn't been negatively impacted, I guess, from that characterization of what it is. So what are we seeing in that stream? How is it just numerically it's showing a problem, or is reality such that when you go out there and look at it, it is a problem?
So we've visited that stream for the last 3 years and have done miscellaneous flow measurements. And some measurements are below that ARI threshold, but very few. So that's ultimately saying at some points it's dropping below that line, but it's not dropping below that line, you know, half the time. So there's likely not an issue. We're actually, that's one of the sites that USGS is installing a new gauge. So we will have continuous gauge data in the next summer. So we will be able to see it. And when we see that, you know, it's probably not dropping below that ARI threshold, there's something wrong with the tool where there's a 2 aquifer system there, and how's it interacting? And we've got to come up with better stream flow depletion models or a 3D model that would give us a more accurate answer.
Just the caveat that that's not the official definition of an ARI in the statute. That is not how we determine it. But again, that is how we're monitoring these as we go.
Yeah, it's kind of like a red flag indicator.
Okay.
And Doug, you wouldn't expect stream type would change. And an ARI with less of a change, and that would cause a classification change. And those are just, that's how it's classified. So it doesn't mean that they've gone out to try to reevaluate that classification. That's not necessarily part of what they do.
Right.
And so the ARI change can actually be fairly small. For example, in coal transition stream, it's a very small number, and it's specifically that you don't want to see a change in the stream causing those returns.
Yeah. And as we've experienced with ENR proposing to reclassify the Prairie River, that can be quite complex and involves years of data collection on the fish populations to determine the proper classification.
Well, I think it's worth keeping a tighter eye than we have on these. It seems like all of them have a good story, and you're working on solutions to them. But I think probably what James alluding to is that by the statute and the rules of the Great Lakes Compact, we can't kind of have a growing list of some of these because they're not allowed. Right? You know,
Right.
Not honoring it, but there's a great story, so we just have to keep working on solving. Do they belong in there? Do they not belong in there? How do you justify it? They're not going to be determined to get them out of there, but there's kind of a penalty box that we're not really clearly allowed to have. Andy wants to. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I know James Cliff was probably wisely trying to keep us out of the details here, but just so everyone is on the same page, you know, the definition in the statute of the ARI, adverse resource impact, is the decrease in the index flow. So meaning you have to have record that shows the index flow was once higher and is now lower. It's been decreased. So that's the key point there. So we track these watersheds as was shown here in the on the screen as far as the modeled accounting that would have the modeled decrease in stream flow, but that is not a measured decrease. It says we know the flows used to be this and now they're lower now. So that's the important point to keep in mind there. So yes, it's an indicator for us to go out and have take a look at those folks, at those streams, I should say, and take the measurements that we do and observe temperatures and all of those things. But it's modeled versus actual observed.
Thanks, Sandy. I appreciate that. And that was kind of where I was hoping to get to with discussion of kind of this list is to get an understanding of we're tracking these, they're showing it as being over their allowable withdrawal limit. Are they actually, and you know, how are we keeping track of that? And then what's Eagle's kind of decision-making process for keeping an eye on those? And then if they do turn out to have a decrease in their index flow, what's next steps from there? So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Jim?
Yep.
That was it.
Yep. Any other questions?
Do we want the committee to look into that some more? Or do we want them to bring more to the council directly?
Well, we can ask them, but I think my hunch would be to give them time to get some of the information together and bring it back to all. But I'll give that space to Jim and we'll follow up.
Okay, so I have we can work on having an update, come back to you for the February meeting. Will that work?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, appreciate that.
Perfect. All right. Next up on the agenda is the site-specific review case study. We're gonna have plenty of time to get through this. So I would ask that you save your questions to the end. I'll be watching the online chat, so if there is a problem with the presentation halfway through, drop it in the chat, we'll get that resolved. So I'm gonna turn it over to Dave and he will introduce the rest of this.
Okay, so this, we had a meeting in the models committee where we went through these two presentations on one site specific review. And when I referred it back to the council, I kind of mentioned, it seemed like two ships passing in the night. We had people speaking past each other. It was obviously a lot of work's been done, but it was really kind of confusing to so how we're going to deal with this. So I've worked with with Tritium and with the department quite a bit, and I think we've got a presentation that is going to really help illustrate what goes on with the site-specific review. I think what you see is that there is a lot of work that goes into this. This is not a simple process. And you'll see
we appear to have lost the presentation.
Frank, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't hear the presentation.
Okay, we all got dropped from the meeting, so we're all rejoining. Did you hear any of Dave Hamilton when Dave was talking?
From his this first slide, purpose of a site-specific review. He was in the process of reviewing that when we lost everything. And I think he was most of the way done with that review on that slide.
Okay, can you see now can you see the slides?
I can see the slide now and I can hear you like you're sitting next to me, so it's good.
Why don't you just go ahead and restart?
Okay, I won't do the background, but I'll start back on the slide. So the purpose of a site-specific review is pretty straightforward. It's to determine the best estimate for the index flow and best estimate for the stream depletion for that proposed withdrawal.
Dave, can you hold on a second? It's still, at least on my teams, it's still spinning to open the PowerPoint.
Okay.
You're Jim, I can see your presentation.
Okay. It's my computer.
Yeah, I think it's you, because it's just,
Okay, everybody.
yeah, Pat and I are on the Teams meeting, we can see the slide.
Me too.
All right. Okay. Cool.
So the site-specific review occurs when an applicant tried to go through the tool and the tool doesn't say no, but it says go see the department. That's on the site-specific review is triggered. Or someone can voluntarily come in and ask for a site-specific review.
We just lost the slide.
Yeah.